Step into the time machine. Let's travel through the past. Mr. Gold's gonna take you on a history blast. From ancient civilizations to the world wars. Get ready, hold tight, breathe.
Hey guys, in this video I want to give a summary of the American Industrial Revolution and give a bird's eye look at some of the innovations that happened and how it affects us today. There's going to be some things that I omit from this video, so we won't get into the Civil War or like the great industrialists like Carnegie and Rockefeller and those guys, because I'm going to have separate videos on them. So this is the quick overview. The cotton gin was invented in 1793 by Eli Whitney, and it really increased the production of and the processing of cotton by taking the seeds out of the cotton and making it so the cotton could just go into the threading machines and become yarn and cloth and so forth. The cotton gin is short for cotton engine. It's just a mechanized way of pulling the seeds from the cotton. 1844, you have your telegraph by Samuel Morse. This is going to transform communication, allowing for instant messaging across long distances as long as they have the telegram cables. Steam locomotive, 1830s. The introduction of the steam-powered train facilitated the mobility and transport of goods and people across the country. It's going to really shorten the time that it takes to move heavy goods and people. And then finally, the Bessemer steel process. This is going to lead to the production of steel, making it more affordable and commonly used in construction. And then it's not going to be in these slides, but later on in our American history unit, we will see the skyscrapers and the urban development, as well as the transcontinental railroad that comes from the steel making process. Back to the big themes here. I'm not trying to pause this stuff. Capitalism and corporations are getting more rights and more power at this time. So you're seeing the free enterprise system develop in the United States. And one of the key inventions and innovations of that system would be in 1790, you have U.S. patent law, which means that an inventor will have the right to profit from their inventions without anyone stealing or copying their idea. That way you have like people like Edison, for example, or these inventors that are creating inventions, no one can steal them and reproduce them, so they get all the money from whatever they invent. So it gives inventors more incentive to invent and push innovation forward at this time. You also have westward expansion occurring in the late 1700s and early 1800s. Due to an increase in agricultural demand, the United States begins to move away from the eastern seaboard, the Northeast, where they started as colonies, and people branch out to the more agriculturally friendly Midwest. The soil in New England is not very good for farming. They have good rivers, they have good water, good climate, but the soil itself is not as good as the Midwest. So between the years 1800 to 1822, you're going to see a huge move westward. And then New England is going to focus more on factory work and urban living. Factory work increases rapidly, causes the population of the cities and the urban centers to grow. Also, towns begin to experience increases in population, just for the fact that it's easier to centralize shipping, electricity, manufacturing, commerce in one central place. With internet and telephones, it's easier to spread out. But in these times, it's easier for a ship to just go to one location, drop everything off, put all the factories in one place, put all the power lines in one place, put the roads in one place, as opposed to today where you see it everywhere. And we're going to get into some maps later that clarify why this is so common at this time. So the places that benefit the most, the old cities like Boston, New York, Baltimore, cities around waterways and the coasts and the rivers specifically. As the cities grow, they begin to build libraries, museums, colleges, etc., in around the cities. Then you have around the late 1700s, you have states like Vermont, Kentucky, Tennessee, Indiana, Mississippi, Illinois, Alabama, and Missouri that get let into the U.S. and become states. And that will drive populations west because now it's no longer considered the wilderness. It's a documented, mapped out location that Americans are allowed to move to freely. And those places are going to start paying taxes and becoming part of the union. For example, in Ohio, from the years 1800 to 1821, the population goes from 45,000 to 581,000. So in a 20-year period, it's over a 10x increase in the people that live there. And most of these people are coming from either immigration or the East Coast to get some of this luscious farmland that's out west. Here's a map that illustrates the concept I was just explaining. Everything in pink or peach is the states in the U.S. in 1822, and then the orange area, so like Florida, Michigan, Wisconsin, Oklahoma, all of the Louisiana Purchase are in orange. They're not incorporated into the states yet. They are just territories. And then everything that the U.S. later takes from Mexico is still in gray. So Texas, part of Oklahoma, Arizona, New Mexico, California, Arizona, Utah, Nevada, part of Colorado. All these places aren't even on our map yet. They're not states or territories. And then in the bottom right, you see a popular painting from, I think his name is John Gast in the 1870s of what looks like, the way I interpret it, there's thousands of interpretations of this, but it looks like this woman, she might be an angel, she might be an American that's just able to fly, but she's holding a Bible in her hand and heading west. And you have all these wagons heading west and the pioneers heading west and the buffalo. They're all facing left, which is the direction of west on the map. And it's really promoting the idea of manifest destiny and westward expansion. So some of the social changes that are occurring at this time, as people are beginning to head west and become more industrialized, is urbanization. It's the rapid industrial growth that led to the migration to cities, alters the demographics, landscape, and living conditions of the Americans in these places. More crowded, less sanitation, better access to resources because of the centralized location. Labor movements. So the rise in factory jobs creates a working class where the whole family is included in the fun. You have kids working, you have both parents working in these factory systems, but the wages and the conditions are terrible. So yes, they do get work. The problem is the work is very dangerous. It's monotonous. It's not healthy for the body. And this creates the labor movement. People are going to fight back. They're going to have strikes. They're going to have protests asking for better hours, better wages, better treatment from the worker or the bosses of the workers. There's going to be a shift in the family dynamics as well. So instead of a whole family working on the farm together, you see the whole family working in the factory together, trying to make money in the urban centers. You have especially women and children working outside of the home, whereas before in those cottage industries, you have women and children working on the farm or working in the house. So that's going to change how, instead of being family centered, we're going to be city centered as a people. We start to see education reform at this time due to the factory system and the needs of the economy. People are starting to focus less on the traditional education and more on skill-based labor and skill-based education. Public education becomes the standard and there's a more widespread push for public education, literacy, and specialized training. So schools get more attention at the time because the businesses need it, and where the money goes, that's where society sometimes goes. You also see the temperance movement coming of age near the late 1800s. That's the movement against alcohol. The businesses have problems with drunkards coming into work and hurting themselves. Families have trouble with like drunk fathers and underage young drinkers being hard to live with and almost also abusive and wasteful with their money at this time because of the high alcoholism. Society begins to have problems with saloons, people staying out all night at bars, coming into work drunk, making irresponsible decisions. And women especially become victims of this lifestyle change in America of increased alcoholism. So women played a key role in the temperance movement and actually getting alcohol to be banned, which we'll go further into in a later video in the 18th Amendment. So some of the big social movements, you have the women's rights movement that comes as women are fighting against alcohol and fighting for better working conditions and better treatment. You see the Seneca Falls Convention of 1848, where females gathered to protest the right to vote and equal treatment under the law. Some of the key leaders here, we have Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and Lucretia Mott, who were fighting for equality and voting rights. The big legal milestones that come from this would be the passage of laws that allow equal standing in marriage. So no longer is a woman considered property of her husband. It's considered an equal partnership in marriage. And you also have equal property rights where women can buy houses with their wages instead of having to have a man buy the property. And then finally, women get the right to vote in the passage of the 19th Amendment, which we'll cover later. But these are the big ones. You have the women's rights movement, the temperance movement, and the labor reform movement that were the big key events at this time. So coming after this will be the Gilded Age. That's a product of this industrialization that's happening in America. You have the economic boom that creates lots of new wealth for people who own the railway network, the canals, the shipping, the railroad. I mentioned the railroads, but the steel that makes the railroads, and the banking industry. There's going to be an increase at the end of the 1800s, early 1900s, of wealth disparity where there's a significant gap between the rich and the poor. It highlights issues of social inequality that still persist today in America. And then you have, which I'm going to make separate videos for each of these individuals, but you have the robber barons, John D. Rockefeller, Andrew Carnegie, you have Vanderbilt, these guys, Gould, who were able to amass these huge fortunes due to the exploitative nature of their business and the immense profits that come from inventing a new way of life. So they're going to be handsomely rewarded for their railroads and their banking innovations and their steel innovations. And then finally, we have our cultural impact. The Gilded Age influenced American culture significantly. It can be in the entertainment industry, the theaters, the music of the day, the consumption patterns, the fashion patterns, even to the degree that homes were built, as you can see in the bottom right, with new styles of architecture, more of a gaudy, look at me type architecture that wasn't present before this period in America. And also the politics. You see the influence of wealth on politics really coming of age in the late 1800s, early 1900s. So I hope this was informative. I hope you guys can use these slides and this information to better understand the Industrial Revolution. And I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you. Bye.
Step into the time machine. Let's travel through the past. Mr. Gold's gonna take you on a history blast from